First of all, we start with Deputy Micheál Martin.
I led the way yesterday, Ceann Corley.
Now, hold on. Listen, let's start the business first. And I can't take a snapshot of everyone at the one time, but let me remind you, before we put up our hands again, that on last Thursday, the Ceann Corley indicated that there was a long list and priority will be given to those people today. And when I have a look at the list, we will complete that. Deputy Micheál Martin.
Taoiseach, the government has been less than transparent and generally is at sea in explaining and accounting for the extraordinary escalation in the cost of the National Children's Hospital. In 2016, you as Minister for Health announced that the hospital would cost $650 million all in, including inflation, VAT and contingency. And at the same time, you said that short of an asteroid hitting, the hospital would be built in 2020. A year later, that $650 million figure became $980 million. In 2018, it became $1.7 billion. Before Christmas, Taoiseach, you told the Dáil it was $1.4 billion. Yet we now know that that figure was actually $1.7. For some reason, you withheld that information from the Dáil, and I would ask you why you didn't give us a full figure on that date when I raised it here. Minister Harris and his department were told about the escalating costs in August, yet Cabinet was apparently only informed in December. Why? Why wasn't the Cabinet and the Dáil kept informed, accurately informed, of developments in relation to the hospital's costs? Now, this by any yardstick, Taoiseach, is extraordinary stuff. $650 million in 2016, $1.7 billion in 2018. Stockholm, when they built their children's hospital, became a famous outlier. They built it at a cost of $2.1 billion, way over cost, but it at least provided 1,340 beds. At $1.7 billion at the moment, our hospital will provide 473 beds. Not an additional bed will be built or provided as a result of this extraordinary increase in expenditure. And despite that near trebling of it, we've had no satisfactory explanation or accountability. It beggars belief, Taoiseach. It reveals a chronic lack of political oversight in terms of the approach to the expenditure on this project. In September of last year, replying to Deputy Barry Cowan in this House, Minister Harris answered that the total budget was just a little over $1 billion. 6 weeks later, that became $1.7 billion. Was the Dáil misled in September? Why were the true figures hidden? Was it because of the budget discussions that were ongoing? Was a decision made to keep the cost of this project overrun hidden from the public view? Because if you remember, Taoiseach, discussions were ongoing around the budget about the huge supplementary estimate to health on the current side. Was it going to be over 700 million? Was it going to be close to $1 billion? Yet there wasn't a murmur about overruns on the capital side and on the new children's hospital, when people knew it was going to hit 1.7 billion. It's impossible, Taoiseach, to reconcile, to understand the Minister's reply of September 2018 with the actual reality of a 1.7 billion cost that emerged in a Cabinet memo in December.
Taoiseach.
So, Taoiseach, the question I have to put to you is this. When were you first made aware of the escalating cost of the new children's hospital? When was the Minister for Health first made aware of this? And do you agree, Taoiseach, that this issue demands an inquiry in public, preferably through an Oireachtas committee, with full compellability, openness and transparency?
Taoiseach.
Thanks very much, Deputy. I think when we talk about the Children's Hospital, we shouldn't forget about the enormous value that this project will bring to the country. A major improvement in healthcare and paediatric care for our most valuable citizens, our children. 450 beds, every single one of them single rooms, very different to what we have now. Space for parents to stay overnight. 15 theatres, 5 MRI machines, 2 ambulatory care centres at both Tala and Connolly, thus reducing the need for admissions and attendances and the total need for hospital beds, parent accommodation, an academic research centre, and it will in itself be born digital. This will be an enormous asset for the country and one that will serve our children well, not for decades, but for longer, perhaps for more than 100 years. In terms of the capital build of the hospital, the capital build cost for the project is £1,433 million. That includes all of the capital cost for the main hospital at St James's, which will also house the school and third level educational spaces, the two outpatient and urgent care centres that I mentioned at Connolly and Tala, and also equipment for the 3 sites, the construction of the car park and the retail spaces. These same elements made up the capital cost figure of £983 million, which was reported to the government in April 2017. In terms of my knowledge of the additional rising costs, I was informed that the costs looked like they were escalating again, probably sometime around the end of November, and I asked for full information. As is always the case when I'm told something, I asked for full information and only got that full information a day or two, if not the day before, that particular cabinet meeting in December. The additional cost, £319 million, relates to construction, and the balance of that, £131 million, includes £50 million in VAT. Other costs relate to staff, consultants, planning and design teams, risk and contingency, and also the management equipment service. So the construction cost is £1.433 billion. But as I acknowledged in the Dáil the day after, that this could rise. Obviously, with construction inflation continuing to rise, any delay potentially adds to the cost. And the cost of a hospital can involve more than the construction. It's also necessary, of course, to equip it, and that can be done either by buying the equipment or through a management equipment service contract, whereby the equipment is not bought but is leased and maintained on a long-term basis. Why did it go up? A number of reasons that have been explained. Construction inflation, fire safety rules, which required a much more expensive sprinkler system, very much more expensive, a miscalculation around the cost of electrics and cabling. The board got that wrong. And also, obviously, any time the cost goes up, the VAT goes up as well. And we shouldn't forget that some of the figures being bandied around don't include VAT. In terms of further inquiries, the Department of Health has retained PwC, the expert accountancy and consulting firm, to carry out an analysis of this and to report back to government in a few months' time with more information as to how the costs escalated in the way that they did.
Deputy Martin,
You're saying you were in. By the way, Taoiseach, people talk about increase in costs. We're not talking about a normal increase in costs here. We're talking about an extraordinary escalation in costs. Because it was you said in 2016, 650 million. All in, you said. VAT, inflation, contingency. That's what you said 2 years ago, Taoiseach. And you're now telling me that as Taoiseach, you were told only at the end of November that this was up to 1.7 billion. Now, surely, Taoiseach, and you might inform the House as to why the Minister for Health, Simon Harris, didn't tell anybody, it appears, until November or December, when he was told by the Department about this in August. And the Department, in a statement issued, said it kept the Minister for Health fully informed about the escalating costs. But not a whisper to anybody until late December, and then the memo gets leaked during the Christmas holidays period. The full memo gets leaked, which reveals the 1.7 billion, which you were aware of in December, but choose not to say to us. So, Taoiseach, do you think it's acceptable that the Department is told in August, the Minister for Health is told in August, and you only find out about it at the end of November? And a sprinkler system doesn't explain a near trebling of the cost, Taoiseach. VAT doesn't explain a near trebling of the cost.
Taoiseach, to respond.
There is no confidence that this will be held at 1.7 billion. I see private health officials privately are acknowledging that we're looking at 2 billion and there will be little change out of 2 billion before this is finished.
Taoiseach, to respond.
Who was in charge, Taoiseach, politically? What went wrong? And look, reviews by accountancy firms, Taoiseach, are all well and good. That's only locking it up for another couple of months. It needs a public inquiry with compellability, preferably through the Oireachtas.
there's no one single thing, whether it's VAT or fire safety or construction inflation or an underestimate of the costs of the cables and electrics. There's no one thing that could possibly explain an increase in the cost of this nature. Of course, it's multifactorial. Of course, there are a number of different reasons why the cost has gone up. The estimate didn't just go up from 650 million to 1.433 million. It went up to 983 million, and that was reported to government in April 2017 and has since gone up to 1.433 million, and that was reported to government in December. That's the full construction cost, including the car parks, but doesn't include ICT investment, for example, and some other associated costs. As I mentioned, the review that's being undertaken by PwC commenced this week. Department of Health officials have engaged with the HSE and the consultants in relation to finalising the terms of reference and the methodology and the timeframe for this review. I look forward to seeing that review. Obviously, we'll be very happy to publish it once it's done, and I have no doubt that Oireachtas committees will want to consider it as well.